Hello and welcome back to another Transformers review. Today we're taking a look at the Deluxe class Mirage. I have some problems with this guy, and you can probably see a big one. Yeah. We'll get into that later, but for now, let's start off as always by taking a look at the articulation. Alright, starting out with the head, it's on a very, very scarily tight ball joint. Seriously, I don't know if this is a QC issue or what, but wow, I feel like I'm gonna snap this off if I turn it. So, I'm pretty sure it can go all the way around, but I'm not going to try it. The shoulders are not too bad. They have a transformation hinge here, but they're also on a fairly sizable ball joint, so get a rotation all the way around. Also a swivel at the bicep, and 90 degrees at the, well, slightly over 90 degrees at the elbow. Also there's a transformation joint here at the wrist, but I don't think we count those. There's a rotation at the waist, which is a transformation joint, but it does work, so can't really complain, I guess. Though it is a little bit tight on mine. Yeah, QC issues. We'll get into that in a bit. The hips are on ball joints, and I mean, perfectly fine. No real limitations there. Rotation up here. You can tell that the thighs are painted, and that does cause some problems with it. There's apparently a bend at the knee here that gets just under 90, or maybe just over 90. I don't know. We'll get into that. But wow, this is a tight joint. And due to transformation later, you do actually have a forward ankle pivot. So, I mean, it doesn't really hold any weight, but you can actually have him walking. So, I mean, fairly basic articulation for a Deluxe, but it does everything it needs to. Now, let's get into accessories. Not very many. You get this sword, gun, scrap metal, honestly. It can be held either as a very tiny and kind of ugly sword, or as a kind of tiny and very ugly rifle. I don't like this weapon. I don't like how it doesn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the figure. And in general, it just doesn't look that good. Also, the fact that it's so hollowed out doesn't exactly help things. And then you get the line-wide gimmick, which in this case is supposed to be sort of an engine thing, which is, you know, painted silver, which is nice. Pretty obvious what this turns into, isn't it? He can actually hold it as a weapon, which looks frankly ridiculous. It's worse than the Titan's Return weapons, where it was a massive bucket. At least this is filled in, but it has other problems. Or it can be plugged into the shoulders, nor on the back. You could give him one really big foot, but I mean, that's don't worry about it. Also, this is a 3mm port, which is compatible with pretty much any stand that has that kind of port on it. I'm glad they started doing that. It does make posing these a lot of fun, but, well, not this one in particular, but yeah, before we move on to the size comparison for robot mode and then get into the transformation and all that, let's go over the main problems I have. One, the chest is ugly. I mean, yeah, the covering over the obvious combiner peg is one thing, but they have detail that matches up with the blue, but they didn't paint it blue. Well, not even paint it blue, just mask it so the white paint doesn't go over it, because this is a blue piece. You can see the blue bleeding through the cheap paint. Most of the white on, well, all of the white on, no, most of the white on this is paint. The back of the lower leg, and the hand are white plastic. Pretty much everything else is blue and is painted white. If they were going to paint the chest anyway, they could have made like these little details blue and broken up this white. It would have... The chest is bad. It just doesn't look good at all. The head sculpt looks alright. The face looks a little weird, but that may just be the paint. Another problem, again due to the paint, those knees that I pointed out. You'll notice this is kind of wobbly on these. Yeah, you feel like you're gonna break these knees off because the paint means it's really tight, and because this is a sliding joint, which we'll get into in a bit, not a lot of stability here. So it ends up just, you feel like you're gonna break the leg whenever you try and bend it. Which isn't helped by the fact that it feels like this thing's QC is completely... I may have just gotten a lemon, I will admit that, but... It's hard to even put into words. Just, I was really disappointed by this. I'll get into more detail of that when we get to the conclusion, but just, yeah, I don't like this robot mode. Now, getting into a quick size comparison, and, average size for Deluxe. Not really anything to talk about, honestly. Now, getting into the transformation into vehicle mode, it's a very simple transformation, though there are a few problems with it, but that has more to do with the fact that it's a kind of a crappy figure. Rotate the stupidly tight waist. Peg these together. Like that. Make sure that the legs are straightened out enough that they'll actually go in, and then you kind of just have to force it. Because it really doesn't want to go together. Alright, now there's a couple pegs in here. You just peg that together. Straighten the arms out all the way. Fold away the hands. Then you just kind of slide this in. There we go. It goes into the slot between these two pieces. So you want it to be over this and under this one. And you push it in, peg it together. Ignore that paint for some reason. Want to get this down over and tap it into place. Make sure the head's not rubbing against anything. And there he is in his F1 racer, which I have to admit does look pretty good. There's not really anything I can complain about. It does the job perfectly well. Also, you can take this with the peg here and plug it on top, and again, it doesn't look horrible, but it does look kind of ridiculous to have a giant engine on it. And you could peg this into the side here if you wanted, or here, maybe in the back if you wanted to, but there's not really any proper storage for it in the vehicle mode. That peg is actually for transformation. It's not going to work. It's unfortunate that aside from just sticking it onto the side or at the back, there's not really anything you can do with it. It doesn't really roll that well either. These aren't pinned in or anything. They're using like a reverse mushroom joint kind of thing. So, can't get them off, but it also doesn't mean they roll very well. The thing is, there's such a little clearance with this that, yeah, it just kind of scrapes across the bottom. It's not, like, this is transformed properly. It's just this... I don't think this was very well engineered, to be completely honest. Now, as for size comparison in vehicle mode, it's slightly longer than my usual measurement, but you can get an idea for the size. And now, let's move on to the other modes, because this is Combiner Wars, which means all the Deluxes can become limbs. So let's fold this back. I do kind of like how this works out. I mean, I'm pretty sure they did this on a few other figures, but just the way that the head is just completely hinged. You can kind of decapitate him, which is kind of funny. Let's get that back out of the way for now. You know what? Let's turn him into the. If I can remember how this is supposed to go for the leg mode. Let's do something like that, I guess. You should probably rotate the head around, but again, super tight. I'm not risking that. I don't want to break this thing's head off. Yeah, that should do. You just want to take this, fold this out, make it in there, and get this combiner joint out, which I always have trouble with, and I don't know why, because none of the other figures I have that have this joint are a problem. And yeah, something like that is the leg mode. And since this is the Combiner Wars foot, that's all it does. There's no ankle pivot at all, so it's basically a brick. And it does just kind of look like a crashed car. Granted, combiner limbs generally look like that anyway, but this does just kind of look like a F1 racer got into a bit of a crash. They didn't really do much to actually transform it. Now, thankfully, pop this off, fold this back down, and unpeg the arms, and basically put him back into robot mode. Let's be honest. Let's make it the left arm, because why not? And yeah, here's the thing. These guys didn't really peg into anything, so you just kind of have to be like, yeah, it's done now. Let's bring this down or up or something or whatever. Let's have it pointing out like that, I guess. I don't even remember what the official transformation was, but honestly, it probably doesn't matter. It didn't look very good anyway. So let's get that up and kind of form an actual shoulder out of this scrap metal. There we go. And the lower doesn't do anything. You want to get the fingers out, fold this like that, fold the thumb up, form a hand, which I do like how they actually made a foot and a hand out of these, even if it doesn't look quite right. And you can't actually fold the fingers out further than that, but works well enough. But yeah, this does actually have a double jointed elbow, even if the lower legs are so spindly that it looks completely awful, and that's another problem I have with this. But yeah, it makes a better arm mode than anything else, to be honest. It at least looks like something. It's not completely horrible. These combiner joints are all the same. They just ratchet. And if I remember correctly, they are actually properly springed ratchets, so you don't really have to worry about them snapping. And of course, there's nothing you can do with this, so... So, in conclusion, I don't like this figure. If I had my time back, I would not have bought it. I wanted a Mirage. This was the only one that was really available at the time. Between the incredibly spindly thighs, the kind of lackluster transformation, the bad QC on mine, the overabundance of paint, without doing anything interesting with it, they just spit white paint onto the chest and called it a day. It's just really lackluster, and honestly, I kind of feel ripped off. Yeah, don't buy this. There are better Mirages, there are better combiner limbs. There's no reason to buy this, unless you want specifically this figure, and even then, I would advise against it. Anyway, that's been all for this review. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe you like this figure. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for future reviews, and watch my backlog. And as always, until next time, happy building.